Welcome to Blind Level Tech. I'm Jonathan Price.
I'm Evan Starnes.
And together, we're bringing you news, tech, and information about blind technologies.
Being blind doesn't mean you have to stop living.
We're going to show you just how possible it is to live the life you want. That's super cool. Evan, How are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. A few minutes late, I was trying to figure out why our volunteer portal had gone down, and had not gotten on the phone with Trinware because it started working again. And now it works. And so now, after this, I'm going to have to see what shows were missed. Fortunately, it was only down for like a few minutes, but man, it was
You know
crazy.
what's funny is that anytime you threaten to call IT or you threaten technology, sometimes it just happens to work. And last week, my computer was going on the fritz, and I got kicked out of our session 3 different times, had my computer started. And so now we're dealing with this. And it's a great start to November. So
big time.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting experience. Well, we're going to jump right into it because one, our guest has way too much to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I've been chatting with him for the last 10 minutes, and I should have been recording because it was just awesome conversation. But if you guys are joining us for the first time, go back and listen to last week. We were on with Gary Bartos of Echobatics, and it was just a really fun conversation about some really cool new technology. And he was talking a lot about this, like, kind of, I'm going to say point and see, but you use your finger to point at labels and tags and things like that to have it read over the camera, which is super cool. And so we'll have him back on when we have more information about this new update that's coming out in a couple weeks, couple months, whenever that rolls out. So that'll be awesome. But this week I'm super excited because this guy speaks directly to my head, my heart, and my stomach. So I'm super excited to welcome Chris Peltz to the show of the Blind Grilling Experience. Chris, what's up, my friend?
Yeah, not much, my friend. Try this again. No, I'm excited to be here, man. Excited to have a conversation with you guys, and yeah, absolutely.
Well, so I'm gonna start because you're a hunter, and I'm kind of gonna go from field to table, if you will.
That would be great.
And because the first thing that I think of, and you're blind, tell us a little bit about your vision journey before we get into the hunting and the grilling stuff, because I want people to understand that we here on Blind Level Tech, we want people to live their maximum life no matter the barrier. And so tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm in central Missouri, near the Army base, Fort Leonard Wood. My dad was in the military. I was an Army brat.
Nice.
We moved to a 2,500 acre farm. And when I was 10 years old, I was out in the middle of a cornfield coon hunting and realized that I was having some vision issues. I couldn't see even with the headlamp on. I hollered for my pa to tell him, hey, something ain't right. So he took me back to the truck, and I just waited for a little while, and we started this journey of eye doctor visits. And I was medevaced from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to Denver, Colorado, where I went to what used to be Fitzsimmons, a Air Force hospital. Now I think it's the Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital. Yep.
And I was there for a month, where did several tests and was diagnosed with RP, retinitis pigmentosa. And so that's when I was 10. My dad gave me about a year to kind of mope around and just kind of, be like, woe is me, what's going to happen? All my dreams, are shattered. And he walked into my bedroom one morning at 4:30 and grabbed the side of the mattress, picked it up, and literally rolled me onto the floor.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And, and he,
welcome to the world, son.
That's right. He said, all right, it's cold, middle of the winter. I had to break ice at a pond for the cows to drink, get hay out, and do everything before I went to school. And he told me then that he knows that I'm going to have to work twice as hard when I leave his house, so I might as well start now. And anything and everything that I wanted to do, he tried to give me the opportunity and try to find a way. I loved hunting. I loved fishing. I loved the outdoors. And, it was just a matter of, all right, let's find a way. Hold on to his shoulder. If you get left behind, stay where you are, and as we come back through, we'll pick you up. And there was a couple of times, I think maybe once or twice at the most where, got kind of tangled up in some brush and ended up just staying while they, continued deeper into the woods. And a couple hours later, they came back, picked me up, and it was all good. And wow. And so within the first 6 years, I lost 80% of my vision. Whoa. And so by the time I was 16, I was legally blind, wasn't able to get a driver's license. Sure. And had to go through that process of not only learning to use a cane, but, getting over, that idea of using a cane, that everyone kind of goes through. But I continued to do everything I could when it came to, being outdoors, when it came to, I rode mountain bikes for a while, and,
nice.
And it always takes a catastrophe. I end up breaking every bone in my right hand before I realized, okay, not riding bikes anymore. Yeah. So, but I did everything I could, and I surrounded myself with people who were willing to help me try to figure out how to do it.
And that's an important feature to make sure everybody understands, that when you surround yourself with the people who are in your corner, there's truly nothing that you can that you can't do. Yeah. And so I think it's awesome. So, okay, so we're going to transition right into the field of hunting, because you talked about growing up as a kid and hunting, and when people think of blind people doing anything, hunting is the last thing that they think blind people should be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you put a blind person in the wilderness with a gun, and that just sounds like absolute pandemonium. So tell me some of the cool technology and how that works when you're out hunting, outside of the actual hunting process, because that's a little bit different than what we're going to be talking about. So walk me through some of this cool stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first lost my vision, where I had no usable vision, I still wanted to get my kids involved in the outdoors. I wanted to get them out and train them, teach them how to hunt, make sure they enjoyed the outdoors, and in that process of getting them set up, we came across a few really cool tips and techniques. For example, I use a red dot scope.
Yep.
And it doesn't project a laser. It's a red dot scope. So when you look through the scope, there's a red dot that's right there, where basically the crosshairs would generally meet. And on those red dot scopes, there's no eye relief. So there's no magnification. Mm-hmm. And so an eye relief is basically the distance you need to be from the scope in order to get the proper view through the scope and line up your shot.
Gotcha.
But since there's no eye relief, there's no magnification, someone can stand behind me, look over my shoulder and through the scope and help me line up the shot. And that has been probably that's what I've had all my success with. I've tried other really cool technologies with cameras that are mounted to the scope. There was something for years called an iScope, and I think another company owns it now. And it worked really cool. An iPhone basically gets connected to your scope. It looks down your scope, and someone can sit next to you, look at your iPhone screen, and see the crosshairs and help line up your shot. As with all technology, there are limitations. We were out in Nebraska on a muzzleloader hunt, and it was negative 22 degrees. Oh. And at the time, I had an iPhone. I think it was a 4S. And
nice.
It wouldn't come on.
No, it ain't coming back.
Yeah.
You better go put that sucker next to a fire, because, oh, heavens.
It wouldn't even give you the message, iPhone is too cold.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Throwback.
No. Yeah. So, we had deer in the field. We're setting up. I'm like, I could shoot, but the phone won't come on. It won't work. So, yeah. So there are limitations, so when the weather's perfect, then something like that works great. But that red dot scope, it didn't have those limitations. And so,
Right.
So that worked really well. I put my hands on the shoulder of somebody who guides me out. We whether we're going to a deer stand, a ground blind, or, chasing, a rutting elk or something, we, just, my hands on the shoulder, step for step. When we would come to a downed aspen tree or something, my guide would just kind of, as he stepped over with one foot, then he would tap the log with his other foot. And so I would know my step was going to be over that. And,
Sure.
and we just really became a cohesive team going through the woods. I could feel him raise his shoulders to keep brush, from coming back and slap me in the face, so I could raise my elbow, and keep that from happening. And then we would set up on shooting sticks. He would step behind me and kind of grab my elbow and look through the scope and let me know when I was lined up on the shot and tell me to pull the trigger.
Well, what people don't realize about being in the wilderness with somebody who is blind is that guiding is an incredibly different animal, because when you're guiding around the city, you're more concerned about, sidewalks and steps and doors and things like that. Those are pretty rudimentary when it comes to guiding. Now, when you're guiding in the wilderness, and we actually did an episode on this, I don't remember the exact episode, but we did it with Evan and I were talking about guiding Jenny Owens, who came out to Colorado for a hike, and I took her up in the mountains and did some amazing hikes. But it's imperative that as a guide, when you're hunting or when you're out in the wilderness, that you are very descriptive to a point. And it's kind of a give and take relationship where you've got to give them as much information as is beneficial and not overwhelming, versus not enough information where they hurt themselves. And so it's this very fine balance. And you guys, like you said, work as a team. And it's a really beautiful symbiotic relationship, and it makes the nature of the hunt that much more, I guess, precious from a hunting standpoint, because you're doing this literally together. Without one, you can't do it without the other, and I think that's beautiful. So,
and all the other aspects of it, the sounds and even the smell. I mean, people, I think when we get into the food aspect, when we think about smell. When you're hunting elk, when they're, in a mud pit rutting, and this musky smell that is just, it's very distinguishable from anything else. And I know a lot of hunters that are like, really? They have the smell, and they've been hunting elk for years. And now that they know to pay attention for that. Whereas with me, I'm like, man, what is that smell? And the guide was like, oh yeah, there's an elk pretty close.
And people don't realize that if you get a good wind drift, you can smell that up to about a mile away.
Yeah.
And it's, I love that. It's a pretty pungent smell.
Yes, it is.
If you've never smelled it, the closest thing it smells like a dirty swamp, kind of. At least that's what it smells like to me. But, well, very cool. So I want to go from field to table, and you do a lot of game meat and a lot of processing, and you've cooked a lot of things on the grill. And if you want to hear some of those grilling tips, go check out Navigating Life with Vision Loss. He was on there last week with Kim Wardlow, our host for Navigating Life, and they just had an amazing conversation. It was so much fun to hear that. But what I want to get into is the technology behind some of the stuff that you use on the grill, because another place that I assume people would balk at is a blind person with fire and a grill. So we've gone from people with a rifle to people behind a grill, and we're just covering all sorts of dangerous territory. So what are some of the cool technologies behind grilling?
Yeah, well, of course, there's always the simplistic approach, right, where you just simply get a ceramic plate or a cast iron plate that goes between what you're cooking and the fire itself. But then there's the connective technology where the accessibility really comes into play. And, I have a controller for a charcoal grill. I use a Big Green Egg. It's a ceramic grill.
Yeah.
But there are controllers that are made for these eggs. And there's this company, Flame Boss, that has partnered with Blind Grilling. And they created this controller, and I had one of their competitors, and it was completely inaccessible. So I contacted Flame Boss. I'm like, hey, before I drop another, a couple $100 on a controller that may or may not work, do you know if it'll work with, Flame or with voiceover? And they were really cool. They responded. They said, you know what? We don't know, but we will send you one, and you test it and you tell us, which was awesome. So I got one back when they had the 100 and 200 unit, and it was not completely accessible at the time. And so I went through and explained what was wrong, what was good, what was right and not right.
Sure.
And it was all at the time web based.
Oh, okay.
And so they're like, well, let's create an app. And so they created an app. They made me a beta tester, and they worked with me to get everything accessible.
Nice.
And then because at the time they still had units where you had to read on a screen a code in order to get it connected to your Wi-Fi. So you had to have sighted assistance. So then they created their 400 unit, which has no screens, nothing that you need any sighted assistance for.
Really?
And it just connects to the app, completely accessible, and it allows me not only, because it's got a fan, not only can I control the temperature
very cool.
of the grill, but it also has a meat probe, so I can monitor the temperature of the food at the same time, all on my phone. And let's say I'm doing something at 250 degrees, and I can watch it from across town on my phone. But I can also, cool. Let's say I'm on my way home, getting off work, and it's probably got another hour, 2 hours before it'll be done. I can actually change it to raise the temp to 300 degrees so it'll cook a little faster and finish off.
Nice.
And then when I get home, it's done. So it just basically just adjusts the fan speed, adds more oxygen to the fire, and but I can control all of it accessible with the phone.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a game. It was a game changer. I think my kids may have been more excited for it than I was at first, because hey, go out and check the temperature.
Yeah. That Missouri cold. I don't think they want to go stand out next to the grill.
No.
Oh heavens!
I didn't actually know that there was such a thing as like an accessible controller for a grill. Especially when it comes to all the modern day stuff. It's funny because we were last week in last week's episode just talking about all these new devices adding modern day touchscreen, or adding touchscreens to their devices and making it all inaccessible. And then you have to find the Wi-Fi button, and it's usually something you can't feel. And so that is actually cool that they'd make such a controller. And how long has this actually been a thing for? Like,
well, the controllers have probably been around, at least the first one that I'm aware of, probably around 10 years.
Oh, wow.
The Flame Boss came out, I would say 8 to 9 years ago. And then 7 years ago is when I got in touch with them. And we actually debuted, they allowed me on our YouTube channel to debut their 300 unit. And then since then they've come out with the 400 and the 500. Nice. The 400 is what has no screen at all. And is what we usually, in packages that we've provided in times past to those who've lost their sight, the 400 is what we would provide in those packages.
Talk a little bit about those packages that you are putting together for those who are blind.
So we try to do 3 or 4 a year if possible. When we first started, we were actually providing Big Green Egg grills as well.
Wow.
We did a fundraiser out in Georgia at the headquarters about 6 years ago, and they basically said, listen, if you can get a hold of some dealers, if maybe they'll provide the eggs at cost, which is what most of them have done. And so we've been able to pick up eggs at cost from local dealers. And then Flame Boss, of course, has provided the Flame Boss 400 unit, and a lot of other rub companies and other accessory companies have jumped on board with us. And so we try to set up folks with, we would set them up with a grill, with the accessible controller, charcoal, and we would show up and run through their first cook with them. And we've done that for a corrections officer, an Army veteran, a police officer, and a few others who have suffered vision loss. And then after COVID and everything else came about, we've it's one of those things. Fundraising is not my thing. I'm not. I hate asking people for money. So, which is not good for a nonprofit, right? Yeah. So, and so we kind of transitioned to where we were not so much doing the whole packages, but if someone was going to, invest in a Big Green Egg, then we even now try to help provide. We're allotted so many, and usually about 4 a year, where we set up packages with accessories, controllers. There's accessible meat probes that we try to provide, heat-resistant gloves, and some other accessories so they can get started with their cook on their new grill.
Absolutely. This might be more of a general grilling question, but to anybody that hasn't, and maybe you've already answered this too, so if I repeat myself, forgive me. But if to people that might be interested in, firing up the grill for the first time, grilling their first, even just something as simple as like a hot dog or a burger patty or, a steak, because a steak is always a good hit and always a classic. What would you advise to very, very first time want to be grillers?
My usual recommendation is cook things at a really low temp. Burgers and steaks are really the even chicken breast. A lot of folks are, you hear about people messing up chicken breast. But if you'll follow a few simple steps, there are some things that you can do for the first time. And initially, I recommend not getting over 275 degrees.
Absolutely.
Stay at 275 degrees. It keeps the fire low, and you'll get a little bit of smoke, good charcoal flavor, but you generally don't have the flare-ups and things like that. No. And then what you can do is it's called a reverse sear. And so you put a meat probe in your meat, and you bring your meat up to your desired temp, probably maybe 2 to 5 degrees short of your desired temp, and pull it off the grill, and then take it inside and heat up a cast iron skillet on the stove and sear it.
That's a cool idea.
Now, when you get more comfortable, you can actually do the reverse sear, but then pull it off the grill, crank up the heat on the grill, open up all your vents, get the grill real hot, and sear it on the grill itself. But, for those who are just getting started, keep it low and slow, and no flare-ups, no big flames. Get close to that desired temp, and then bring it in and finish it off inside on a skillet, just searing it for about 2 minutes aside, and the results will just be phenomenal. It'll be the best thing you've ever put in your mouth.
Absolutely true.
That sounds awesome. I'd never heard of that method before. Maybe this is more of a me question, but would you say you talked about temperature probes and app-enabled ones and ones built into the Big Green Eggs. Do you have any thoughts on like talking ones? Do you think they're good, or should people really try and go for do you have basically to put it simply, do you have any recommendations for probes?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. The talking probes are good to have. The problem with the talking probes is the companies that make talking probes use their lowest line of probes to put the speaker and everything in. And so they're not the best probe. They generally they're not the instant reads. I don't know of any instant read where you put it in and within a second it gives you an accurate temp that that talks. All right. So that's, as far as I know, that's not out there. Now you think 1 second to 7 seconds. Well, how much of a difference or how long really is that? Ask somebody who rides a bull. I mean, they go 8 seconds. Really, is it that long?
It's a long time.
Yeah, it can be.
Especially if you're talking about getting salmonella from chicken.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it 1 to 7 seconds can make a big difference, especially if you're like me and you're impatient anyway. Mm-hmm. And so talking probes are good to have. They can give you a good reading, but they're usually not the most accurate and they're pretty slow. There is besides the Flame Boss, which is a wired probe, which they have without the fan controller. They have just a thermometer, Wi-Fi thermometer that's wired. The base sits next to your grill. The probes are wired going into your meat. And so you can monitor your meat temps. But there is a wireless one it's Meter, MEATER, and it's the Meter Plus.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, and this is where on our podcast, I really try to stress to folks, the Meter, they have several different probes. They have the Meter Plus, which is completely accessible, no touch screens. It's just when you pull it out, it works. It connects to the app. It is Bluetooth, with a caveat of a way to do Wi-Fi, but you can figure that out or listen to the podcast for that info.
Yeah.
They do have a Meter block, which comes with 4 Meter Plus probes. Mm-hmm. The problem is the block that it sets on has a touchscreen, and without sighted assistance, you cannot select the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connectivity in order to get the cook started. And so it's completely inaccessible for someone who is blind or visually impaired. Wow. But their Meter Plus, their single probe, it has a meat probe at one end, and at the other end is an ambient temp, so it actually gives you both readings, and it's completely wireless, and it's completely accessible. I love it. I use it all the time.
Wonderful.
You can use it in your oven as well as your grill. And so... Flame Boss thermometer and the Meter Plus, but not the Meter block. I try to stress that because I've had a few folks who have gotten the Meter block and they'll be like, yeah, we thought maybe there were workarounds and that maybe you just didn't know yet. And no, there's not.
No, that's a bummer. Yeah, especially, I mean, the temperature probes, things like that are absolutely critical to getting a good cook on your meats, especially when you're talking about health, just from a health standpoint. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to cook undercooked chicken, you better look out. Yeah. Undercooked beef's not too big of a problem, but it's pretty amazing. And since we're on the topic, go ahead.
Well, even overcooking like chicken or pork, you can dry it out in a heartbeat, right?
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
so being able to pull it at the right temp, and not relying on feeling, a lot of people put, a finger to the meat of their thumb or something and try to figure out how tough, how the doneness based on that feel, that tenderness.
Yeah.
But it's inconsistent. Whereas when it comes to temperature, you get a consistent cook every time.
Every time. Man, I'm getting hungry. So, Evan, I think it's about time for our sandwich of the week. All right. So, Chris, you do a lot of game meat. You do a lot of interesting things on the grill. I know when you talked last week, I think with NLVL, about pies and cakes and cookies are still kind of a hard thing for you. So I'm hoping that we can solve that problem. Yeah. And because I'm a sucker for a snickerdoodle and a chocolate chip cookie. So if you can make those happen, then I will show up very quickly.
Okay.
But We like to talk about sandwiches. And so what is the most, have you done sandwiches on your grill? And if so, what is your favorite sandwich?
Wow. That's yes, we've done sandwiches.
Okay.
Like paninis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can,
Of course.
whether it's French bread, ciabatta bread is awesome on the grill.
Yum.
And so you can do open face sandwiches. We've done that with some brisket or pulled pork and cheese and throw that on the grill and heat those up. And so there's lots of things that you can do when it comes to sandwiches, no doubt, as far as meat and things like that are concerned. But a tenderloin sandwich, whether it's a pork tenderloin and a biscuit or an elk tenderloin.
Dude,
right?
Those are the best.
It's just, anything like that. Yeah, we love doing those on the grill.
Now, do you put a specific sauce on there or any sort of jus?
So, you know what? I got hung up on this Alabama white sauce that when it comes to those sandwiches, I really haven't found anything better than my favorite is Lane's Barbecue out of Georgia called Sorta White. And it's kind of a horseradish base, white sauce that is just phenomenal. So nice. That's more of a sauce I'll put on a little bit. But sometimes, especially with game meat, whether it's deer, antelope, or elk, sometimes I'll do a marinade where it's a 50-50 mix of soy sauce and Worcestershire, and then add some Montreal seasoning and then jalapeno peppers and onions and bell peppers in there and just let it marinate overnight, and then throw it on the grill or pan sear it, something like that. And those make for great sandwiches as well.
Yeah, with that game meat, you've really got to make sure you get those things tender because there's no fat on them. If there is, there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, and they don't take long to cook. They don't take long at all.
It's real quick. Evan, you got a good sandwich?
I'm going to stretch this a little bit, but we're on the same page here. I'm proud to say mine is an elk burger. I love elk burgers. Mine. Oh, I did?
Yeah. Well, so mine is a stuffed bison burger.
There you go.
And so I do the burger with the toppings in the patty. So I'll do sauteed mushrooms and onions with shredded pepper jack cheese. And then I'll throw in all the seasonings and stuff, and I'll create the patty just with that. And then I'll top it off with whatever barbecue sauce or whatever, sauces I've got. And it's just, oh my goodness. Sometimes if I'm feeling spicy, I'll throw in some diced jalapenos into the batter.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna help you kick it up a notch.
Please. Yes. Let's do it.
All right. So get your smoker ready. Right.
Okay.
Let's say, you can do it at 275 to 300 degrees.
Right.
Get either a maple wood plank or an alder plank.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I've done it on a cedar plank.
Cedar's fine, but alder or maple is even better when it comes to the game meat. And because we're talking about such a lean meat, right?
Yeah.
If you add any beef or anything, don't add much at all. Because usually, and basically make a meatloaf and do a wood planked meatloaf with that.
Heavens,
that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, and the reason I say don't add the beef or anything is because when you're doing a wood plank, all that grease is just going to go everywhere, right?
Fire.
Yeah.
And so you're going to limit. If you don't add a lot of fatty meat to it. First of all, everything else you've added will give you that moisture. That cheese will give you that moisture.
Yes.
Your peppers and things, and so and even a little bit of sauce in there will add your moisture and not have that grease overrunning and dirtying up your grill so much. But yeah,
absolutely.
Those wood plank meatloafs are amazing.
And don't forget, if you do decide to use a plank, make sure you soak that sucker.
Yes, okay,
otherwise
that's right.
You add grease to a dry piece of fire, to a dry piece of wood. And
it's a recipe for disaster there.
Yeah. And we're in the business of recipes for food, not disaster.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
Appreciate that. Okay. Final thing. Tell us, please plug your podcast, The Blind Grilling Experience. Tell us about that show.
Yeah. Blind Grilling Experience is all about cooking and not just the grill, right? We get into sous vide cooking. We get into just regular oven cooking. Frying, grilling, smoking, and any and every kind of meat. We talk about the technology and accessibility, tips and tricks, techniques, all of those things. You can find us on all the podcast catchers. Just search for Blind Grilling Experience or go to our website, blindgrilling.com, and you can find our podcast page there with all kinds of links to various podcast apps.
And it's pretty cool. And you guys do any merch?
Every once in a while, we'll have some shirts or sweatshirts. We've done some other things in the past, but it's pretty much on. If somebody wants something, sometimes we'll do Yeti cups with the logo on it.
Oh, cool.
But it's hard to keep some of that stuff in stock.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys ever come out with some hoodies, I want a hoodie. Because those, man, it's a cool logo that you got. So appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Hey, if you're looking, you ain't cooking.
That's right.
Gotta love it.
Well played, sir.
That was perfect.
That was awesome. Evan, anything from you?
No, but I definitely didn't want to steal anything from the show. That's why, as hard as it was on BLT, you didn't hear me like, hey, what's the best smart smoker or whatever, because there's loads of that on the Blind Grilling Experience itself, and I really don't want to steal your thunder here. I'd seriously encourage anybody to go check out the Blind Grilling Experience. It is a really good show. Also available on AINC now as well.
That's right. And so, we've created a really cool partnership with Chris, and I'm so glad to have you in the AINC fold as one of the offerings that we have.
Big time.
Did want to make sure that we announce that if you have any questions, comments, concerns for Evan and I, or any of our podcasts or hosts, please visit feedback@aincolorado.org. You can ask us anything, and we'll try to answer it on the air, and that'll be awesome. And then make sure you check out Blind Grilling Experience. And we are in our second week also of
November.
The Colorado Gives
Colorado Gives Day. It's coming up December 5th. You can go to aincolorado.org/donate, but also keep in mind Colorado Gives Day, they've really revamped it and added a lot of new fun things like trivia games, drawings, and all sorts of cool new incentives. So check it out and help us out, donate, and we definitely appreciate your support big time.
Absolutely. Well, man, Chris, thank you for being on our show. It's been such a blessing.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Really appreciate it. Enjoy listening to you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah, and if you're ever in Colorado, let's break bread together, and maybe we'll go on a hunt. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, for the entire AINC staff and on behalf of Evan Starnes, this is Jonathan Price. Don't forget to plug in your devices. We'll talk to you next week.